Copenhagen was not a cheap breakaway. We had to ask ourselves, is it actually worth it for families like ours? City breaks with kids can feel like a lot of hard work. You know what I mean, a lot of walking around, museums, and a lot of our son moaning about his legs being tired. We're sharing things to do in Copenhagen with kids, things that actually worked for us in real life. No exhausting schedules or dragging kids around things that they just don't care about. Hey there, I'm Martin from 3 Tickets Anywhere, and we travel as a family, sharing what actually works, as well as things that don't. We recently came back from Copenhagen and did many things on this list. We couldn't do them all, unfortunately. It was snowing whilst we were there, and we just ran out of time, which is just so easy to do. If you're planning a trip and want honest advice instead of hype, please do subscribe. First up, we have Tivoli Gardens, and this is one that should be on your must-see list. As soon as I read about Tivoli, I knew our son would love it. It is pretty expensive, and I'll be honest, I was worried about just how cold it would be since it was the middle of winter. The mulled wine helped keep me warm. The great thing about Tivoli is that it's not just your typical theme park. It's right in the middle of Copenhagen, and it's got a mixture of rides, food stalls, and a lovely park to walk around. Something right out of a storybook. There's a mixture of different rides, but if rides are not your thing, you don't need to go on them. You can just get entry to the Tivoli Gardens and enjoy a walk around the lake. Now, the entrance fee with unlimited ride pass is £56 or $77 per person. Not cheap, but we spent the entire day here, so I'd definitely say it was well worth the money. Next on the list is Strøget. I really hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I'm so sorry to any Danish people watching. Now, we couldn't come to Copenhagen without Rach checking out some of the shops. It does sound a little boring for kids, but there are some great shops for them as well. A great thing about Strøget is that it's completely car free, so you don't need to worry about traffic or pulling your kids away from the road as cars drive past. Now, you cannot really come to Copenhagen without seeing Nyhavn. The colourful buildings are iconic to Copenhagen, and even in the snow, it looks fantastic. Nyhavn is a great place to go for food and drinks, although it is very expensive, so bear that in mind. It's also a great place to take some nice family photos, although you do need to avoid the hundreds of other people taking pictures. Experimentarium ended up being one of our favourite things to do in Copenhagen. It's a massive hands-on science centre that encourages kids to touch everything, build, test, and experiment. Nothing is really behind glass. It's loud, interactive, and very busy, but definitely in a good way. We easily spent half a day here. With it snowing outside, we needed a break from the cold, so it was really nice to find somewhere indoors that was nice and warm. There was a bubble area where you could create a range of different bubbles. Our son absolutely loved where he could put himself inside a giant bubble of water. There was a music section where you could play tunes with light sensors, and he even ended up watching a live dissection of a lung and a heart. We did not expect him to find it as fascinating as he did. A perfect mix of fun and curiosity, and something for him to share with his friends when he got home. At only £29 or $39 per person, it is definitely great value. Rosenborg Castle is next, and we were debating on going or not, as we didn't know if our son would actually enjoy it. Luckily for us, it was not too far away from our hotel, and he generally did like it. It actually really helped that before we went in, he got to watch a marching band opposite. I believe this was to do with the changing of the guard. You can go on the grounds of Rosenborg Castle for free, however to go inside the museum it does cost around £16 or $21 per adult. There are a couple of things that you do need to consider though. Inside the castle it was very busy, even in winter when we went. Younger kids might also get bored pretty quickly. Now it only takes around about an hour or so it's not a big day out, but it makes for a nice stop off attraction whilst on the way to see and do other things in Copenhagen. Funnily enough, we were about to leave when the alarm went off. All of a sudden they locked everyone in the grounds while security went in to check the building. For us adults, it was definitely a bit awkward. For our son, it was probably the most exciting part of the whole visit. A canal tour is an incredible way of seeing Copenhagen from a different angle. These 1-hour tours lead from a number of places, with the most popular being Nyhavn. Cost-wise, they do vary from £7 or $10 to £18 or $27 per person. This is one that we really wanted to do because of the snow. They just didn't seem to be running. It's one that I really would recommend doing. It's a perfect way to have a break from all of the walking. We plan to come back in the future, and this will be the first thing on our list of things to do in Copenhagen. The Round Tower is one of the things that I saw on YouTube before going, and I really wish that we managed to do it. Unfortunately, because of the snow, it was closed. Instead of stairs, you walk up a long spiral spiral ramp, and once you get to the top you get views across the whole of Copenhagen. Whenever I go on a city break, I really do try and see the city from as high as possible. It really helps put the whole place into perspective. Now I know I am going to be butchering this name and I apologize right away, but the next up is Amalienborg Palace. Now this is the winter home of the royal family with 4 identical palaces surrounding the courtyard, and I did see this before we went on the trip, but to be honest we actually discovered it by accident. We decided to walk one evening from the Mermaid statue to Nyhavn and happened to walk through here. It is a museum as well that you can walk around, but we got here too late for that. They also do a change of the guard every single day at 12 PM, so it's definitely worth visiting whilst you're exploring Copenhagen. So I did mention the Little Mermaid statue, and this is not part of things to do in Copenhagen, and I'll explain why. The statue is one of Copenhagen's most iconic sites, but this does also make it incredibly busy. We went in the evening when it was much quieter, but even then it was still busy with people just standing in front of the statue for ages trying to get the perfect picture. It's also a little bit out of the way from most of the city attractions. It is nice, but to be fair, it's a statue. It's very quick. Our son saw it for about 2 seconds and was literally ready to move on. So for us, it didn't really feel worth the walk in the cold, even though we're glad we can say that we've seen it. Copenhagen is an incredible city, and for our family, it really worked. The snow might have changed our plans a little bit, but there are so many amazing things to do with kids. So if you're looking for a city that still works when things change, where your kids can enjoy themselves, and where you don't need the perfect plan, Copenhagen might just be worth considering. If you're now wondering what it's actually going to cost, I've broken down every pound we spent on our last Copenhagen trip, including the bits that surprised us. You can watch that video next, or check out the rest of my Copenhagen videos.